is it's about Bitcoin for Africa and Bitcoin by Africans. So as a society, the intention is to shift the narrative of Africa as that continent where people consume technology that's created elsewhere to a place where we're building technology that's relevant for us by ourselves with the skills that we have.
Hi. So welcome everyone to another episode of Okcoin Live. We're here today with some special guests from all around the world, actually. Here with Qala, and we're here to talk about what Qala's been doing to train and expand Bitcoin development all around the world, and particularly in Africa. So Qala is a live in-person as well as a virtual training session, a program where Bitcoin developers in Africa get to join the cohort and basically learn how to code and develop in Bitcoin and Lightning. So I will pass this on to Qala and to give a quick introduction of what Qala is and what you guys are working on, and then we'll introduce the rest of the guests. So Qala, please.
Thanks, Jason. So I think the high-level overview of what our program is a Bitcoin and Lightning jobs training program for people based in Africa. And we like to think of it as connecting African talent with global opportunity in Bitcoin. So we've just wrapped our first cohort where we had 12 developers run through a 3-month paid course where they learned to develop in Bitcoin and Lightning, doing various different projects that they built on Lightning with presentations and research topics about Bitcoin, and really kind of immersing themselves in Bitcoin and Lightning development for 3 months. We've now come to the end of that cohort, and we have started to place those individuals in jobs in the Bitcoin industry. We are currently in the process of taking intake for our second cohort, which we're hoping to boot up towards the end of this year.
That's exciting, and I'm also excited to announce that Okcoin is going to be supporting Qala's efforts in this program. Super excited about that. And so while we're doing introductions, Femi, we have also Femi here, and Vlad and Eni. Please correct me if I'm mispronouncing any of your names. And why don't we go ahead and do some quick introductions? Femi, maybe with you first.
Okay, so I'm Femi Longe. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm the program director for Qala. So I lead setup of Qala, manage everything as far as administrative is concerned, but also leading in terms of the fundamentals of the curriculum and supporting the fellows all through. Really, really great to be here and great to have Okcoin on board.
Thank you. And we have 2 members of the recent cohort. Vlad, maybe you can give a quick introduction.
So I'm Vlad. I'm from Cameroon, but currently based in Nairobi. So I was part of the first Qala cohort. It was quite an amazing experience.
Thank you. And Eni.
Okay. Yeah, just like Vlad, I was also part of the cohort. My name is Eni, and I'm based in Nigeria. And I got the opportunity to have 3 months of learning and building with Qala, and I jumped on it. And I think I'm very grateful for the experience. And yeah, I would really like to share some of what it was like with you here today.
Awesome. And I'm sure we'll get to have you guys share some stories and your experience in a little bit. But first, maybe Qala, I'll just ask, and Femi too, maybe a broad question. Why Africa, and why training developers in Africa? Why do you think that's so important?
I can take this one. I think that the reason that this program was initially founded, it was by 4 African Bitcoin developers, myself, Bernard Para, Tim Akimbo, and Abibakar Khalil. And we all work in different parts of the ecosystem. You know, Bernard's the CEO of an exchange. I'm a Lightning dev. Tim does open source Bitcoin work, and Abubakar's a VC. And although we work in these really different parts of Bitcoin, we all had a really similar experience of coming to Bitcoin and specifically Bitcoin development completely alone. There was no BitDevs meetup every month that you could go and ask questions or learn at. There was no friend to explain to you that people aren't nearly as scary as they seem on Twitter. And when we all finally got to meet each other, we all had this moment of like, oh, this, and we met each other through the internet, as most Bitcoin people do. But finally having the feeling of like, oh, this person's like me. They've gone through the same thing. Like I have someone that I can talk to about my internet being slow, so I can't sync a Bitcoin node, or my government failing to provide me with electricity and my Lightning node being wiped, and all of these things that are really unique to our experience, even though I live in South Africa, they live in Nigeria and Ghana, like completely different countries. We had this common experience, and we started to realize that there is just such a lack of a presence of a developer pipeline for Bitcoin devs in Africa, period. There is nothing here for anyone on this giant continent filled with talented developers. And the Bitcoin development pipeline, I think, is a problem everywhere, but it was particularly shamefully lacking in the places where we're from. And we thought that that was particularly tragic, because if Bitcoin is really going to reach the potential that we all think it can, I'm fairly convinced it will do so in places like Nigeria, in places like South Africa. It just has so much potential here. But it's really difficult for people to build solutions for things they've never experienced. So one side of it was bringing developers into this new field and giving them this opportunity. But the other side is really contributing to Bitcoin and having people who've actually experienced the problem that Bitcoin is intended to solve firsthand, building and contributing to the things that we build on top of Bitcoin so that it can be as successful as it can be. Femi, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I mean, and so I came into the journey loving it. So I spent the last 12 years supporting startup founders that solve in Africa, that are building solutions to solve African problems. A few years ago, I left to go back to school to learn more around learning and how learning happens. And for me, I'm excited about Bitcoin because of the potential it has, particularly in the African continent. I think most of the use cases for Bitcoin are probably not in the developed world. They're probably in places across Africa. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have a critical mass of people who understand the context of Africa, who are involved in building both Bitcoin, but also building the applications on top of Bitcoin. And I think it's critical that we have them in the room because they understand the context of the problem. A developer in Silicon Valley will build a solution and has never experienced the power cut before, has never experienced slow bandwidth before, and so does not put those things in consideration as part of the design parameters that they should be thinking of. Whereas if Vlad was building that and he's experiencing it every day, he's thinking of that. He's thinking of it from the point of view of the people who are going to use the solutions. So when I was invited to join this journey, for me, it was a no-brainer. How do you help African transfer the skills that they've already built as software developers, but specifically building for the currency that's going to drive the world? How do you empower them to build the applications that brings the next billion, the next 2 billion, the people in Africa, the people in the hinterlands in Africa on Bitcoin? But also, how do you help those developers build livelihood and get jobs that are 2x, 3x, 4x what they're currently earning, and potentially then the values that and the benefit that has for their families and the people that are around them. And so for me, it's been an amazing journey, and we're starting to see the premise of the program come to life.
That's amazing, and I'm not too personally familiar with Africa, but I know it is very diverse. It's very large, right? And there's so many different countries and cultures and peoples, right? So what are some of these? I know Vlad's from Cameroon and he's in Nigeria. So what are some of these specific problems that you guys have experienced, whether in your local areas in Cameroon or in Nigeria? What are some of these problems that Bitcoin could solve? I mean, just trying to make it more relatable for someone that's really never been to Africa or doesn't understand? Anyone can take this question, really. Yeah.
Yeah, let me
Okay.
let me go first.
Sure. Vlad, why don't you go first?
So all right. So I've been like I spent like last year in Ghana, and if you look at a country like Ghana, you realize that their currency is fast like depreciating. It's losing its value. So I actually went to school there in 2014, but I was living back then. It was like $1 to like 3 Ghana cedis. By the time I was living in 2022 this year. By the time I was living, it was like $1 to like 7.8 Ghana cedis. So we have like currencies that are losing values. Then, as I said, I'm originally from Cameroon, so we use a currency that is actually not printed by us. It's a colonial. It's like I would say like a remnant of the colonial past. It's a currency that is printed in France, and people from the civil society have been protesting against this currency, but our leaders don't want to like move to something that is independent. So for me, I see Bitcoin like as a way of actually doing like a peaceful protest against this colonial system. Yeah, that's like few use cases. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm based in Nigeria. I grew up here for the most part, and I would say that it matters a lot for the growth of an economy if there is access to the global financial market, and if there are restrictions in cases where you cannot buy from or sell to people in other parts of the world, then it constitutes a problem. So I think that Bitcoin will play a very important role in that light because it's permissionless. So there's no banking system that is placing geo-blocked solutions or geo-locked solutions that shuts out an entire continent or a specific country. And you also have the fact that um, you can just make payments and people accept them, and you have access to whatever goods or service that you would like to get. Most recently, I had I subscribe to certain services, for example, Spotify, and recently they were just blocked. My cards were just blocked. I couldn't access it anymore, and I wondered why. And the information from the bank was just clear that you cannot use your card anymore for certain dollar-based or dollar-denominated services. And as much as you want to, there's really nothing that you can do about that. So you have to find some go around the existing system. I also think that the system that we have here, especially in West Africa, where Nigeria is you have mostly banking services, and unlike let's say Eastern Africa, where you have mobile money, and so the very concept of making micro payments for certain things can be difficult, mostly because the banking charges, those charges they compound over time. And so if you want to make a simple payment for a cup of coffee or for um, a bag of mangoes, you have to consider how much charges the bank is going to take, and that can be very discouraging. You want something that would like even if you would be charged for it, it shouldn't be 20% of the value that you want to get from the service or from the goods that you're purchasing. So I think that is very, very important. Bitcoin will be useful, but for me personally, I think that it's the best use case is around self sovereignty, around your finances, that you own it and that it is yours. Most recently, Nigeria had an episode where certain people where had their bank accounts frozen out without any backing laws by the Central Bank of Nigeria. This matters because they were mostly frozen out because their accounts were linked to cryptocurrency, either Bitcoin or any other of the alternative coins that you have around. Now, there was no direct link to anything fraudulent or that they were actively sponsoring the protest that was going on. It was just a blanket call, and everybody who had, in one way or the other, um, conducted a transaction, they were affected. And in a way, it brought to light the fact that, yes, my money is banked and housed by the central bank and some of the other subsidiary banks that you have in the country, but it's not really yours per se. And it takes just one decision from someone high up for you to be frozen out of the system. And I think that if you have Bitcoin where there is no permission and it's all yours, then you can have what you would say is full self sovereignty over your money. So those are some of the cases I think are very, very important here in Nigeria.
Absolutely. I also
Can
read.
I add,
Oh,
Jason?
sorry,
Can
Femi,
I
go
just
ahead,
add?
please.
So, just to give you context, a few years ago, if you were visiting Nigeria and you had to make a payment with your PayPal account, PayPal will have frozen your account just because you did it in Nigeria because your IP address was from Nigeria. And you'll have to get back to the US or wherever you're based to get your account unfrozen. Now, Nigeria has 200 million people, Africa has 850 million people. The fact that someone can police our access to global financial markets. But that's if you even till now they've lifted that ban, but it's only one way. So I can make a payment with my Nigerian PayPal account, but I cannot receive payment with my Nigerian PayPal account, and that's an entire 1/7 of the world that's basically frozen out of global markets. The Nigerian central bank, like Annie was saying, are currently trying to shore up the currency. And what that's meant is banks have put a limit on how much you can spend in foreign currency with your Nigerian card. So even if I had $100,000 worth of Naira in my Nigerian bank account, with my Nigerian bank account card, I'm only currently allowed to spend maximum of $20 in a month on a transaction. So even if I had $100,000, I can only spend $20. And the question is, what exactly can I buy for $20 in a month? And so when you think about things like that, when you consider the fact that a huge chunk of the revenue that comes into African countries is remittance from the diaspora. So people from the African countries living in other parts of the world. And they have all these limits and regulations that change by the day that limit how that money can transact. And that in itself has impact on quality of life for their relatives back home. And you're forced to go through Western Union or one of those other providers that takes a huge chunk of your money as fees to transfer your money. Then you start to understand why currency is important in the continent and why Bitcoin is critical in the continent.
Just to follow up on what everyone's touched on here, I think that people often ask, oh, what's the use case for Bitcoin where you live, or what's the use case for Bitcoin in Africa? And it's never an exciting answer for someone who's never had an issue with their Spotify or had their bank account shut down because they're protesting police violence against their state. Like, when you enjoy that privilege, it's like unimaginable to you that something as simple as payments would ever be a problem, right? And then like that's why I think it is so important to have people who've had these things go wrong in their lives and had to experience your Spotify being shut down or your bank account being shut down or not being able to make a payment. Like, that's why it's so important to have these people building on Bitcoin, because everyone else never would have even thought of it. And it's a massive problem for a massive number of people, as Femi's just mentioned.
Totally. I read about one of your members of the cohort. I think Jennifer was saying she learned about Bitcoin because I think there were some protests in Nigeria, and one of these organizations started accepting Bitcoin because their finances were basically frozen. Really highlighting how important it is to have that freedom of ability to transact, and so that's very powerful. Just maybe a quick question. What, again, Africa's so big. What countries do you think where is Bitcoin sort of adoption, or which countries are embracing Bitcoin a little bit faster than others? Where do you guys see that? We'll just go. I don't know. If you have an answer, just jump
Well,
ahead.
so there are two levels, or a number of levels to it. There is adoption that's coming from the states or state-backed adoption, and then there's market-backed adoption. So if it's market-backed adoption, um, Nigerian businessmen who've been trading in China, who had to move lots of money to suppliers fast, who couldn't be bothered by the risks and of going to the traditional system, adopted Bitcoin even before the rest of the world knew that Bitcoin was a thing. For them, it was utility. They have goods to clear. They can't get it out through the banks because of all kinds of regulations and laws. This technology comes. So if you check the stats, Nigeria is one of the countries with highest adoption of Bitcoin for most exchanges, and purely from a commerce standpoint. We have places like Central African Republic where the government is intentionally now moving forward to say we want to turn Bitcoin into legal tender. The thing is, Central African Republic is a very interesting use case for this. It's a landlocked African country, one of the poorest in the world. Economy, like Vlad was saying, very tied to France, and very limited opportunities. And the state moving proactively to say we want to be at the forefront of using this is their own way of creating advantage, where traditionally, if you look at them, all you'd see is disadvantage. They are almost all the countries that are bordering them are in one form of conflict or the other. So it's not a state that, if you look at, they don't have much in natural resources. It's not a state that you look at and say, oh, these guys have it made. And I see Bitcoin as a way in which there is an attempt to leapfrog where they are. Yeah, those are some. I don't know if anyone wants to add.
Those are great examples. I think the Central African Republic that came about in the news a few months ago. Do you see any other countries that would take that path, follow in those footsteps? Maybe too early.
I think it's probably too early for that. I think folks would hang back and see how CAR goes. There's been some recent news about them maybe implementing their own token rather than using Bitcoin and backing with Bitcoin. So I think that is one of those proceed with caution and see how it goes. Like, I definitely see the strategic advantage for economies that have been locked out just because of their location and history using Bitcoin. But as with all things, like, the devil's in the details, and the implementation on a state level particularly really matters. So I wouldn't expect any other African countries to move for legal tender anytime soon, but I would expect the kind of organic, on the ground, hitting a real need. Like, that's when you take off, right? When you hit a real need that's felt by consumers, that's when you'll get real traction. I think that there's always possibility of Bitcoin being useful in Zimbabwe, although they've had their own kind of terrible history with very volatile currency. So I think that would put people off a little bit. South Africa also has pretty high Bitcoin market penetration, although I think that's majority trading at the moment, from what I know. There are a few interesting projects in the works here where you can buy your electricity with Bitcoin or Lightning and buy your airtime and those kind of things. But there aren't a lot of pizza shops accepting Bitcoin down here just yet.
And maybe just to add, so I think the fundamental use case of Bitcoin around decentralized currency that's not controlled by government probably has bigger use cases here, which is why the chances that you see more African governments adopting Bitcoin is probably low. Um, African governments are still trying to grapple with the internet and social media in how it's giving people more voice, where ordinarily they like you quiet and docile and obedient. So even that for them enough is enough challenge. Talk less of them adopting currency that, in their own eyes, reduces their ability to have power and hold power over you. So I'm not looking, and I'm not necessarily going to be swayed by, do we have governments adopting it? I think the question more is, do we have the people, the citizens adopting it? And I think we're seeing that massively. And we're seeing that massively because of the failures of the state, the failures of the system, the failures of government. And I think that's what we should be tracking, not how many African governments adopt it. The Nigerian government, Nigerian Central Bank, recently launched their own token, which the e-naira, which is a massive flop. Because like most people say, I don't know if I want the Nigerian government to know everywhere I spend my money, right? Because I know the people in there, they don't have the ethical backbone. They will use it against me. And so it's not I don't think that's what we should track. I think we should track more the citizens and the market.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, circling all the way back to Qala, then, how we are empowering the people, right, and people to build on Bitcoin and understand how all this works. Carla, I just had maybe a few more questions about how the program works, how the program got set up, maybe some history for our listeners who want to learn more about this. So, yeah, tell us about the cohorts, the number of people participating, maybe how people were selected, and what are they learning?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of history just to fill in the last remaining gap. I think that when we first started thinking about this program, our immediate reach was to think, okay, we're going to run something like the Chain Code Residency, which was something I participated in 2019, which was a 3-month paid program where you went to go learn about open source in their office in New York. The wonderful program changed my life and has changed many people's lives since. But we quickly narrowed in on the fact that directing people towards open source wasn't going to be the right decision for us, which is pretty strange for Bitcoin developer programs because they're majority geared towards open source. But we realized that it's important in a place where most software engineers in their family are the primary breadwinner. They're perhaps the first person to graduate into the formal economy and work an engineering job. Like there's no space or resources available to kind of spend the time that it requires to meander through open source, build up a portfolio, and then hopefully finally maybe get a grant at the end of a year of free work, right? And that's one of the existing issues in the grant model, that you do have to do a lot of free work to get a grant and to make your way into Bitcoin development. So we landed on jobs for the reason that I spoke out earlier. One, connecting folks with better jobs with global companies, but two, really trying to support growing Bitcoin startups as well. So startups often need to hire quite quickly and quite chaotically. And that makes it very easy for you to make culture trade-offs, right? When you need to hire someone, you can't find someone. The first box that you untick is culture. And that's actually really bad for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin companies don't just need developers. They need Bitcoin developers. They need people who care about self-custodial solutions, who will say no to a SegWit 2x fork if their workplace chooses to support it. So that was a really important part of building out this program. How we started it was chaos. It was absolute chaos before Femi's time. And we were very fortunate to get our sort of seed funding from the Human Rights Foundation. And we got a team together. We were very, very grateful to have Adam Jonas and Carolee from Chain Code to come on board to help us out, because they've been involved in a lot of programs like this. And we pretty much just put a tweet out on Twitter. We made a Twitter account. We said, hey, everyone, please apply. And I think we got 400 or 500 applications in that first round. We put out some ads as well in various publications in Africa. And we then said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with all these people? And we put them through a fairly rigorous application process. Maybe Vlad and Annie can speak to this a bit, but we ran them through a 6-week Mastering Bitcoin study group. We then made them do a coding challenge. We then ran them through a 5-week chain code Bitcoin protocol development seminar. And then we made them do in-person interviews to get down to our final 12 developers. So it was a lot of work, and we're very grateful that they stuck with us, because I thought people would tell us to stuff off, quite frankly, when you're doing all this work. But it was a really nice application process in that it was also a free education in Bitcoin. So at least it wasn't all work and no gain. So we started with 12 devs on the 1st of April this year, I believe. And it was a 3-month paid program, wrapping in July this year, I think. And we mixed the curriculum up. So we were very, very fortunate to have 3 incredible teachers, Will Clark, Duncan Dean, and Stickies V. And they helped us put together a combination of projects building on Bitcoin and Lightning, presentation topics to kind of deeper dive in certain subjects, and some research work. I think I'm going to swing it to Annie to talk a bit more about what you did in the program, because you were there. But we mostly tried to focus on building on Bitcoin, really getting people that like good experience and building up their portfolio of working on Bitcoin and Lightning, so they could enter the job market with like experience, which I think is unlike any other developer trying to get a Bitcoin or Lightning job. Like, it really is like a specialized and special thing.
Okay, yeah, just to follow up on what Qala has said, the first experience having applied was just that study group where you learn firsthand to take full responsibility over your learning, and then you get to meet weekly with peers. And I think that that particular experience where first you take responsibility and then you learn about accountability, that it was very important, because in meeting with peers, you also get to learn from them. You share, you know that the people that you're sharing with are also looking forward to different insights they probably never thought about or never gleaned from their own learning experience. And maintaining that for 6 weeks can be challenging, especially given that some of us were juggling that alongside working or studying. But it was, for me in particular, it was my first exposure into anything blockchain related, Bitcoin related, and it was an opportunity to dive headfirst in. And so, because of that, like being led by curiosity, I took it very seriously, and I really enjoyed the fact that it wasn't some graded session. It wasn't class like. You don't have to report to someone to say, oh, this is what I did today and this is what I learned and I'm not sure. Like, it was led by your own curiosity. So in essence, you have a book to read, but it's up to you just how deep you go, whether you actually read it or not, or whether you go beyond the specified context and try to find out more information. So for the first 6 weeks, you learn about responsibility, taking responsibility for your learning, and you also learn about accountability to your fellow, let's say, study group members. So that's how it was for me. And moving on to the seminar, that meant that we essentially scaled what was the first meet, and so you're going into things that are much more technical and, as expected, more difficult. It was challenging in truth, but the very fact that some of the relationships that you build from the study group with people persist even after the study group, it was very helpful, because um, you had people that would reach out and say, oh, how's it going with the study? Oh, I'm struggling with this. And oh, I found an alternate resource. You can look at this, it simplifies it. And then you can go through that and then go back to the material. It was quite helpful. It kept me focused, it kept me on the journey. It helped that um, as much as we didn't have a deadline, we didn't have somebody to report to, you didn't have the typical classroom structure, it helped that you had fellow peers, people who are just like you, driven to learn about the thing, keeping you on track. I think maybe I can switch over to Vlad, who might want to talk about how the fellowship experience was like. So,
Thank you, Annie. So, from my end, I think one of the things that stood out was it's true. Kala would say that it was the first experience and it was chaos, but then from my perspective, they really did a great job. Before we started the program, they encouraged us to like participate in a hackathon. I think for me that was like a great way to like bond with some of the people in the cohort. So some of us did the hackathon. By the time we're leaving the hackathon, we already knew some of the people in the cohort, and we already had like a small kind of group of people that we could rely on. So which was great. Then one of the things, the main program itself, which is like 3 months, it's really challenging. Like it's I can remember Jonas would tell us that you should tell your family members that you're going to be very very focused for the next 3 months, and that they are not going to be hearing a lot from you. And so it was time consuming and at times too a little bit frustrating, because like with everything programming, you work on something and you get a bug, and at times you're hitting your head around with it. But the mentors really made it easy for us, because like you could reach out to the mentors at any time whenever you had an issue, and they were so helpful. And for me, that I would say was like the thing that made the program really rewarding. Then one of the things that would be important to mention is that each participant actually had a mentor. So you had to meet like every week with your mentor, and which was like it was kind of like a pep talk for like the program, like trying to push you to like move forward. Yeah, which was good. Then I would say overall it was an amazing experience. Yeah, that's it.
So if I may add, so one of the things about that main program and the way we structured it is like Vlad said, it wasn't structured like classroom. It was structured more like an engineering team. So every day we had stand-ups. Every morning, each person had to report, what did I work on yesterday, what am I planning to do today, and which areas am I blocked. And the three teachers we had were always there to jump in to help the guys unblock any challenges they had. One of the things that we also required from the guys every week was that they write a blog post about a technical subject that they were working on. And the intention of that was two or three fold. One fold was to help them learn how to communicate technical subjects, because we didn't just want people who understood Bitcoin, we also wanted people who could communicate clearly in writing, in speaking. The second was to help them build their profile in the whole Bitcoin ecosystem, and to share the things that they're learning, which might then be useful for others coming. I think what you find is in the ecosystem, there's very little material that's actually coming from the African continent, and our intention was to intentionally reverse this by having the guys build the habit of writing every week. And I think it was also good when the guys got to the stage of hiring, because when someone is hiring you these days, they will Google you, and when they Google you, it's the articles that pop up. It shows them something, an additional side to you. And even while they were writing the articles, the teachers were on hand to review, to edit, to help them think through some of the concepts that they had put there, and to express it in a way that's really helpful. And then in the last week, the week before the last of the program, we then met physically in Lagos. And that was the first opportunity, our first time as a group meeting for anything physical. Up till then, everything had been virtual, which was good for bonding, but was also good for getting everybody on the same page again about why we're doing this. And why we're doing this is, yes, there's the education side, there's the getting job side, But I think the best way to summarize why we're doing this is it's about Bitcoin for Africa and Bitcoin by Africans. So as a society, the intention is to shift the narrative of Africa as that continent where people consume technology that's created elsewhere to a place where we're building technology that's relevant for us by ourselves with the skills that we have. And that was a very good way to ground and cement that first cohort, which, by the way, we call our Genesis cohort, uh, as a reflection of the Genesis block that started the Bitcoin.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Sounds like it was really a tough journey, but super rewarding. By the way, I did stumble upon all the blog posts that all of you guys were writing. It's linked on the Qala website. Everyone has a little Twitter icon as well as a blog post icon and a blog icon. And yeah, I was some of the topics are a little bit too technical for me, but I definitely saw everyone's posts, and it was pretty cool to follow along. So I think Emmy and Vlad shared some of their most rewarding moments of this journey. Femi and Carla, I'd love to learn a little bit for you. What was most rewarding for you? You know, sort of setting all this up. What's your takeaway for this first cohort? Most rewarding moment for you. I'll start with you, Femi, and then Carla.
I was going to ask Allah to start first.
Okay.
I think maybe the first set of people that got hired was for me a big deal and a big moment. And of course, at the time when we got in the guys to hiring, the market has started to change as far as the values of Bitcoin and projection of the companies. But seeing the guys go through an experience and before the end of the 3 months, people already getting hired, was for me a testament that, okay, we've been able to take these guys from zero or less than zero to 100 in a very short space of time. Um, but I think also another high point for me was when we actually physically met. Because the interactions had happened so much over the 11 weeks of the selection plus the 12 weeks of the program at that point, that you would assume you know everybody like very well. And it was all the realizations. Oh, I didn't know you were this tall. Oh, I didn't know you were this. I expected you to be this. I think that in many ways it brought why we were doing what we're doing to life even more. I think virtual is good, but I think as a society we're very communal, and we're very human. And I think there's certain things that unfortunately we've not been able to there's certain interactions that we've not been able to figure out how they happen best in the virtual environment. And getting the opportunity to ground that in a physical environment where the conversation is about our continent, but not from the point of view of what is bad and who do we blame, but from that point of view of and what are we doing about it. I think for me, that's what attracted me about the program, and that for me was a big moment for me.
I think I would have to say, as also as the same as Femi, the in-person offsite. The personal motivator for me, like really getting going with this program, was so that people don't have to go through this difficult journey alone, that they will have peers who will be there for them, and they will have community. And, seeing everyone online every day is one thing, but seeing people playing board games in the bar and chatting in the hotel and giving each other a lot of trouble, and just knowing that like this Genesis cohort will have each other for the rest of their careers. For as long as they want to be a group, they will always have each other, and they will not only inspire people who come after them in the next cohorts, which they did at our offsite in Lagos, but also be there for them in the way that the organizing team has been there for them. And that to me, like that's how it all starts. Like I'm probably a bad engineer. I don't believe that scale exists really. I think that everything worth doing is done in very small groups and kind of grows out like that. And this small group will bring in another small group, which will bring in another small group. And like that to me is just like the most powerful and inspiring thing that we've done here.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And sort of looking forward a little bit, and Vlad, maybe you guys can share what's next for you two now that you guys are part of the Genesis cohort and have technically, I guess, graduated from this. What's next for you guys? Any, you can start.
Okay. So well, I was fortunate to have interviewed with a handful of companies just before the program rounded up, and I got and accepted an offer from Galloy, and I've been with them for just over 2 weeks now. And for me, the immediate future is about building the Bitcoin banking infrastructure of the company to get more better as a software developer, given the fact that I did transition in 2021 from mechanical engineering to software engineering, and it's an opportunity to get better at it, to be as skilled as I possibly can, and to work in a company that's doing something that I deeply care about, which is helping more people get access to um, the market like we would like. And that's the immediate future. Long term, I have this hope that I will partner with some of the people in our cohorts, especially Bad and hopefully Toby. We talk about a product we would like to build, something similar to a South African product that's out now. It's called Machakura, which just brings Bitcoin and Lightning down to USSD. And we're really impressed and would like to either contribute to that project if it's made open source, or to try to bring it much closer to home, because we understand some of the context around payments, and it's just something that we'd like to do. Maybe not now, but somewhere down the line. That's it for me.
So on my end, I got the chance to interview with the Bitrust team. So they are setting up an inaugural open source team. So the whole idea is to focus on people who don't have so much experience in open source, and the idea is to give them the support that they need to get started. So my focus as of now is like contributing to the Bitcoin development kit, which is just a library that is used by developers to build Bitcoin wallets. And I'm also looking into other projects. I'm looking into like supporting the Bitcoin community here in Kenya. I'm building a BIP39 word list in Swahili, which is the language that is the most spoken language in East Africa here. So I'm also looking into there are some couple of people in Senegal who are using this same Bitcoin development kit library to like build like a peer-to-peer exchange. I'm trying to help them out with that. So, I mean, as Annie also said, I'm definitely looking forward to collaborating with any of the fellows in the court. Yeah.
Well, that's super exciting. Congratulations to the both of you. Maybe a small plug for our development grant program, right? We've here at Okcoin, this is pretty core to us, and it's very important to us that we support people that are developing and building on Bitcoin, especially on the open source side, but not necessarily. So if you guys had any, you guys want to ping me anytime and see if there's room for our ability to support what you guys are working on, that would be fantastic. Whenever you guys are ready for that. But what's maybe to Carla and to Femi? So now that cohort 1 is over, what's next? There's a cohort 2. It seems like. How is that going? And what any changes or improvements? What's next? Carla, maybe.
Yeah, we do it again. Done it once, we do it again, and we do it better. We are currently in the final stages of interviews for incoming applicants. So we've been through the study group and the protocol development seminars. So we're just busy chatting to candidates now to try and find our sort of 10 to 15 cohort members. It was really nice that some of us had the opportunity to meet some of them. We had an open day at CC Hub in Lagos, and some of them came in to chat to the Genesis cohort. So it's nice to see some familiar faces on those calls. And then in terms of what we'll do better, well, we know how to do what we're doing, and that I think will help quite a lot. We have kind of a skeleton of figuring out how we will run this program. I think in terms of improvements, I would like to have some curriculum tweaks and maybe help folks focus in on where they're interested, because Bitcoin and Lightning is a pretty broad, set of things to be learning about, and typically you'd focus on Bitcoin or Lightning. So I'd like to help people find that focus early in the program. And then I think something else that we can do better is have, towards the end of the program, or even throughout, I guess, have like very clear communication with potential hirers. So we only reached out in the third month, but I think this time around, because people know who we are, they know what we've done, we'll be able to float profiles and content and projects to potential hirers a lot earlier, so they can really get to know these developers as they grow in the program. Because I think that is one of our great advantages, is that tech hiring is really hard. You don't really know someone, and you kind of always have to take a chance no matter how many steps you put them through. So if we can gradually introduce these candidates over 3 months, it makes companies who are looking to hire them so much more comfortable that they know this person will be a good fit, they have the right technical skills, and they have the right knowledge. So that's something I would like to work on in our next run.
And I guess just to add, so we're also looking to increase diversity in our next round and future rounds. We've had a critical mass from Nigeria, which understandably is the biggest market on the continent. And I guess as a Nigerian, I'm allowed to say this. We're also can be overconfident and pushy, and will put ourselves forward for opportunities. We were very consciously trying to bring in people from other parts of the continent too. Other developers who might not necessarily put themselves out because they're afraid that they're not ready. But also, we also want to bring in more women into the program. And like Qala said, we're interviewing. So we finished a round of the one group has gone through the study group and the seminar. Another groups finished the study group are starting the seminar ahead of the next cohort. But we're still looking for interesting, experienced developers from across the continent who still want to put themselves forward. We're very conscious that it's an African program. Part of the legacies of colonialism was the carving of Africa into separate countries. And even decades later, for lots of Africans, we still see those borders more than we should. And so there isn't quite as much cross pollination of ideas of people across the continent. And we're very particular that this is an African program. And we want to also use it to encourage more cross border engagements. So we're very particular that we want to bring in people from the usually unreached part of the continent, but also very particular about female developers, which in the tech world generally is a challenge, and more so in Africa.
That sounds awesome. And so where will potential applicants be able to find details? If they're hopefully they hear about this and they're interested, where would they be able to apply?
So our website is qala.dev. That's
Okay.
QALA.dev. And there's details on the application process, what it takes, what you can expect on the program, how to apply. It's all on the website.
Perfect. And we're writing right up on time here, so I'd love to just end with maybe Annie and Vlad, maybe you guys can maybe share some words of advice for people that are applying or people that may end up going through the cohort. Maybe Vlad, you can start first.
Sure, thank you, Jason. So I think one of the things that I would say, I think Carla has already said it, is if you're trying to learn Bitcoin, it wouldn't be a good thing to learn on your own. It's something that is difficult, and at times you might even think that you've gotten the hang of it until like somebody that's a little bit smarter than you comes and challenges the knowledge that you think you have. So I think it's a good experience to like join a program like Kala so that you can learn with a group. Even if you don't make it to the end, at least you would have at least the ethos that is part of that program. Yeah.
I would say to anyone who's considering that they shouldn't have any self doubts. Like, I know that it can be very crippling, and you can think that, oh, I have to have attained this level of experience or um, covered like personal study grounds before I should even consider applying for this program. But I think not. I think you should just apply. I didn't know anything about blockchain or even Bitcoin. And when I saw the tweet out and I asked, hey, can I apply? And they said yes, and I did. I mean, it's helpful to have some developer experience, but don't doubt yourself and just push. As long as it's something that you want to do, you'll get through it. And um, I look to myself and to some of the cohort members and how we all came in with varying levels of knowledge and experience, and somehow it um, coalesced into a point or a level where we're all very proud of how far we have all how far we all went through to get to where we currently are. So do apply if you want to. It's a very open program.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so great. Thank you for all of you for joining us today. It's so great to hear about what's happening out in Africa. Really excited to learn more about cohort 2. And if you have any interest, definitely apply. I mean, it sounds like such an awesome program and so rewarding and such meaningful connections. So thank you all of you for joining me today. And hopefully we'll learn more about cohort 2 soon enough.